Welcome, everybody, to True Believers, the Marvel MCU podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Here on True Believers, we discuss the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related television and streaming MCU Universe on Disney+, including the connections to the original Marvel comics and how they relate to the past, current, and future of the MCU. Of course, first and foremost, before we get anything started here on True Believers, spoiler warnings ahead. We are going to be talking about, in this particular episode, the first episode of What If, and we will be going into details. So if you have not watched What If yet, first of all, get with the program. 2, go take your 35 minutes, go watch What If, and then come back and listen to the rest of this wonderful podcast. Of course, I can't podcast alone about the MCU. It's just too darn big. But I asked the question, what if Kevin Reitzel was my co-host? Wait, you already are my co-host, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm sorry. I hit the wrong time stream here. I have not seen What If, so give me a second here, okay? Okay, I'm back. I've seen the episode. Whoa, that was really cool. Peggy Carter? What if she was Garth. The first Avenger, dude?
Apparently, Garth Auger has become my new co-host here, so.
Was that his last name? I always forgot.
Yeah. Swing! Anyway, we got that out of our system. You know what? We got a lot going.
I'm excited. New series here, so yeah, we got some stuff to get into.
Yeah, of course, we took a little hiatus at the end of Loki, when the time string went kablooey. We had to kind of reassess ourselves, figure out what iteration of Kang is going to bother us first. But we're back. We're here to see maybe these what ifs could be a result of what happened at the end of Loki, all these alternate timelines and everything like that. So we got that. Maybe that's responsible for why we're asking what if all this episode. But before we do that, we want to give you a little teaser of something else we got coming up once What If is finished. And Kevin, we've been talking about doing this for a while, but we are going to do a chronological viewing of the MCU and start throwing out some reviews and shows talking about the films, kind of a revisit, since it's been a bit since we've done a full revisit of the MCU.
Yeah, and we haven't done that, obviously, for this podcast of True Believers here on the Fandom Podcast Network, but it's something we've always targeted. And other podcasts have done the theatrical release rewatch and podcasted about it. But we wanted to do the chronological rewatch. This is something I'm looking forward to, especially with whenever something new comes out for the MCU. And more recently, we've had a bunch of these. We got to slide them into the chronological version here. And so we have some time coming up. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Shang-Chi when it comes out, doing a special on that. And then, of course, that comes out in September. And then November, we have the Eternals, followed by new Spider-Man movie in December. But we want to kind of get things rolling a little bit sooner than that. And, we're guessing that if we were to do a rewatch in chronological order, the Eternals might be first, so to speak, I guess. I don't know. We haven't seen it yet. But we wanted to start earlier than that. And so we got What If. What If ends after 9 episodes. And we're going to drop our first episode of the chronological rewatch with Captain America, the first Avenger, probably about a week or so after that. And then follow up, because there's going to be some dead space of new material for the Disney Plus stuff, and of course in between the movies, because we're going to squeeze something out between the end of What If and before the premiere of Hawkeye TV series coming out November 24th. So we want to kind of get that going, and then depending when that series comes out, of course we'll take a little break from the chronological rewatch and revisit that after that series ends. But we want to kind of keep True Believers live, going on, continuing, but without hardly any breaks, I guess, right, Kyle?
Well, not only that, but I want to ask you a question, because do we call it the chronological rewatch, or do we, at this point, because the phase is closed and we know it's the Infinity Saga, do we call it the Infinity Saga chronological rewatch?
We can call it the Infinity Saga rewatch, definitely. But, we're not going to be doing the TV series, which take place after. We're not going to be covering those right away. We already have covered them. We might maybe do a special on them later on. We'll see. But yeah, we can call them the Infinity War, chronological rewatch. That might be kind of fun. See how it goes.
I do have one.
And we're sticking with the movies, just so you know. We're not going to talk about Agent Carter. Agent Carter is something we could probably go on a little bit later on. So
I do have one other question about this, and something we haven't really addressed since we talked about Black Widow.
Yes.
If we're going to do chronological, do we really need to throw Black Widow into this chronological rewatch?
Yes, because I think that we need to revisit where it stands in the, and we'll have, we're going to approach these a little bit differently than we have with the reaction stuff, So yes, it's important to rewatch and discover, and by the time we get to it, we're going to see how things have kind of changed and how we feel about it and stuff. So it will be important. So I'll say yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear.
But there's going to be we have to figure out exactly what the chronological order should be, because certain places are putting certain things in different orders. I was looking at Disney Plus, and they don't have the Hulk and Spider-Man movies listed, okay? And depending on where you look, the Incredible Hulk drops in a certain different place. This one I found is Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk, Thor. I'm sorry, Iron Man 2, Thor, and then Incredible Hulk, where some people think it should be after Iron Man 2 instead. Then the Ant-Man and Wasp thing is interesting because it goes from Ant-Man to Civil War, then Ant-Man and Wasp to Spider-Man.
No, actually, no. It goes. You read it. I'm watching the Aeroflow.
Sorry, let me repeat. Let me do that again. Ant-Man, Civil War, Black Panther, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man and Wasp, Doctor Strange, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. Where originally we thought Ant-Man and Wasp dropped right after Infinity War because of what happens at the end and people getting snapped away. So we got to kind of figure that out of where that's going to drop.
Yeah, I think Black Widow kind of changed how we look at that perspective, though, because obviously when Black Widow, the main majority of the Black Widow movie takes place, but then we have the Stinger, which takes place well after Endgame, and actually probably, in fact, after a couple of the TV shows. I think what's happening now is people are seeing that same thing for the Ant-Man and Wasp, where the actual events of the Ant-Man and Wasp movie take place in one spot, but you have that Stinger that does take place right around the time Infinity War takes place when Infinity War
at the end has them trying to go to the quantum realm.
Yeah, but then the snap happens.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's we'll have to kind of figure out and debate that later. But anyway, we're looking forward to doing the rewatch.
Yep. But you know what? We are here to talk about What If, and but before we do that, we got a couple things we want to mention here. First and foremost, Kevin, is the Facebook page for True Believers, where we keep everybody updated with what's going on in the MCU. Of course, our good friend Dave Fielding kind of runs the show over there, which means we get a lot of Captain Britain content. We know, we're sorry, but but I want to throw out something real quick too. I want to give a shout out to one of our friendly neighborhood podcasts, Kevin.
Yes.
You know these guys over at the Long Box Crusade.
Yes, of course.
And they're dipping into a comic book series that almost became a TV show for the MCU, but things didn't work out because of what's happened with Marvel TV. But I just want to throw it out. They're going to be looking at the New Warriors comic book series, which is a great series, especially about the first 25 issue run from the early 90s.
Warriors? What is that?
The New Warriors. It was a team of younger heroes, but most notably, some of the two of the big names in it were Firestar and Nova, and those are two very, very popular names in the MCU. It was a fun little series. I just wanted to give a shout out to them. I saw they were doing that today, and I like those guys, so I wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, I like the network over there. They cover G.I. Joe 2, the Devil Do years, and they do a great podcast called Action Film Face Off, where they randomly pick 2 years of movies between 1970 up until now, and one of the guys has to pick a movie from one of those years, and so on and so forth, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. But, Kevin, before we even get started with and ask that question of what if, let's talk a little Marvel news, which means it's time to get your whip, and your kapow on. Kevin, you have a little website link that you like to go to, don't you?
Yeah, I like to check out MCU Exchange. They do a lot of the breaking news stuff, and they kind of cover stuff that the official Marvel website does not cover. And since we've been away for a little while, I did want to just throw out real quick some news notes of the Marvel world here. First of all, as mentioned, Hawkeye's premiere on November 24th. Second is the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special will be less than 40 minutes long. And Vincent D'Onofrio will reportedly return as Kingpin in Hawkeye. Really excited about that.
Yeah.
And Black Panther Wakanda Forever TV series. Or is that the movie?
That's the TV. That's the TV series.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait, no, that's the movie. I'm sorry. That's
the movie.
Yeah.
Because Wakanda is going to be another TV series. But anyway, they add a cast member. They add Michaela Coel, Coel, and I was looking at her IMDb. She's done a TV series called Chewing Gum that was 2015 through 2017. She was in a movie called I May Destroy You. She also had a brief part in Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, as Resistance Monitor, and in a movie called Been So Long, where she played Simone. She was also in 2 episodes of Black Mirror as well. And The Aliens, a TV miniseries that she was in. So she has been added to the cast. And also we have update on Blade. Acclaimed director Bassam Tariq will direct Blade. And last but not least, new look at the Spider-Man No Way From Home black and gold costume. Kyle, any thoughts on these news you want to share briefly?
Obviously, extremely excited for Hawkeye. We actually talk about this on the latest episode of Culture Clash, which should be out by the time you listen to this episode. I am more jazzed for Hawkeye than I think I've been for any Disney Plus show at this point, and I was really jazzed for Falcon Winter Soldier, but just with Florence Pugh being in Hawkeye now and being a main part of that, and with the cast that they already had in place, I'm really, really excited for Hawkeye. Especially now that...
Were you excited for Hawkeye before all this news came out about who was joining the cast, like when they first mentioned it?
I was very excited for Hawkeye when they first mentioned it, because they're basing it off of a Hawkeye miniseries by Matt Fraction, which was absolutely outstanding, and they're going to introduce the character of Kate Bishop, who I absolutely love, and of course is being played by another great young actress. So, can't wait for that. And then you add in D'Onofrio returning as the Kingpin. Now, we know Charlie Cox is going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home, and what Marvel has said is yes, they're returning as these characters, but they're not going to have that Netflix history behind them per se.
Right.
So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
As long as they bring back the same actors in the same roles, I'm fine with them not counting the Netflix series. They're still there. We can watch them, enjoy them. But if one thing was correct and done well with these series, I thought the casting was done well. I know people will throw up Danny Rand as different. I liked him personally, but I thought the casting was done really well.
Yeah, I agree with you. Marvel always seems to nail the casting. Can't wait for Blade. I can't wait to get more information on that. Mahershala Ali, I think it's going to be outstanding. Yes, it's going to be weird for those of us who grew up with Wesley Snipes as Blade, but I'm really excited about the potential of what they could do with this film. And Spider-Man, there are times, Marvel, I love you, but you leave the classics alone. Spider-Man's only had 2 true classic costumes. Obviously the red and blue classic look of Spider-Man, and of course the black and white costume, which of course was initially the symbiote that eventually became Venom.
Right.
Leave everything else alone. They've tried this in the comics. They've done gadget costumes, all this stuff. Just keep us with the classic Spider-Man look, and that's all I need.
What did you think of the black? What did they call him in the last Spider-Man movie? And he was in London wearing the black outfit.
The Black Monkey. The Black Monkey.
What about the Black Monkey outfit? They actually have an action figure for that one too. I saw that.
Yeah, that one that's a little different because they were playing up on the joke of it there. But
right.
we quit messing with the classic Spidey suit.
All right,
but
stop it.
Yeah. So, that covers the news. I think there's going to be a lot of Marvel news coming here as we start diving into more Disney Plus as we get closer. Kevin, we've talked about the other one thing we didn't talk about too was the Miss Marvel series, which has looks like it's going to be pushed back to early 2022.
Yes.
Just with the time crunch and everything like that. Curious to see where that's going to go. The Marvels movie actually just began filming, so.
The Marvels movie? Oh, good to hear.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
So excited about that as well. But we are here to talk about the latest and greatest that is streaming on Disney Plus, Kevin. Then the series that I think a lot of people have had the most curiosity about because they weren't sure because it's an animated series, and B, was it canon? Is it not going to be canon? Kevin Feige says this show is definitely canon. So pay attention to what happens here.
We're going to talk about that a little bit later, because this particular episode could lead to something. So yeah.
Oh, it could lead to a lot of things, but a lot of things could happen in here. But we are looking at our True Believers look at what if. And in this particular episode, the first episode of this 10-episode run, what if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? Now, Kevin, we do things in a different way around here. But we ask the question before we even get into those of what if?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we got phases, because this is a Marvel podcast. We don't have segments. We got phases. First one is plot description and first reactions and cast comments. Phase 2 is trivia. Phase 3 is plot analysis and ties to the MCU and comics. So we dive a little bit deep into it there. And then Phase 4 is our final thoughts and closeout. So let's get going here with what if episode 1, what if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? Plot description. During World War II, Steve Rogers is initially chosen to be the world's first super soldier. Before he can receive the super soldier serum, Hydra spy Kruger intervenes and shoots Rogers and Chester Phillips. Peggy Carter shoots Kruger and volunteers to receive the serum herself. She is successfully enhanced, but John Flynn bans her from combat. Secretly receiving equipment from Howard Stark, Carter steals the Tesseract from Hydra, and then is promoted to a combat role as Captain Carter. Stark uses the Tesseract to create a weaponized suit of armor for Rogers to pilot as the Hydra Stomper. Carter and Rogers fight many battles during the war, including a rescue of captured Bucky Barnes and Dum Dum Dugan from Hydra. A suited Rogers is captured while attacking a booby-trapped Hydra train and presumed dead by his allies. Carter and her allies infiltrate a Hydra base where they find Rogers. In the base, the Red Skull uses the Tesseract to open a portal and unleash an interdimensional tentacled creature which kills him. Carter sacrifices herself to force the creature back into its dimension. And later, almost 70 years later, the portal is reopened. Carter emerges from it and sees Nick Fury and Clint Barton. So real quick, I just want to mention this. I didn't put this in the notes. Do you think Steve is found alive like Bucky Barnes was, and how Bucky was turned into the Winter Soldier? But then they look at him going, this dude's skinny. Kill him.
I think it was more like try to torture him and get information out of him first.
Okay. Maybe that something will come of that, but I thought that was interesting. Anyway, your first reactions, dude.
I found this very enjoyable. I love the fact that they're, and we'll get into it when we talk about the cast, but I love the fact that a lot of the actors are coming back to do the voices.
Well, this is where we talk about the cast, so go ahead. Yeah.
So, I mean, just the fact that they got so many people back to do their voices. I think really there was only one major character who had a different actor, and that was, as they say, skinny Steve Rogers.
Yes, that was
voiced by Josh
Keaton.
But I think it's great that so many of the actors came back to do this. I found the story very intriguing. I love Haley Atwell, and so anytime she gets a spotlight, I'm down with that, whether it's animation or live action. The only knock I'm going to have on this, and I don't blame anybody for it because I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's just because the fact that it's a 30-minute roughly show, is it just felt like the story was just kind of rushed and condensed at times. Yeah. And I like the ideas they presented with using Captain Carter and some of the different takes they had. There's a few times where I wish they would have deviated a little bit more from the events of the film because of it being Captain Carter instead of Steve Rogers.
Right.
But I think overall it was a really good episode out of the gate. A lot of fun. I enjoyed the animation style. I think it was really smooth and well done. And I think the episode was just fun. And I also you got Jeffrey Wright voicing the Watcher, and I love how they are making him make it feel almost like it's a Twilight Zone episode.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I know it's only a 30-minute episode and they had to get in what they get, but as for your comment about you wish they deviate a little bit more, well, because of the situation was the same at the time with Hydra doing their thing, I don't think they could have deviated too much. It's sending someone else to do the same mission that Steve would have done. So that's why there's some similarities. They had to stick to that. The thing that I liked about it, though, is you did get some differences, like how the Tesseract was captured. I thought was great. But I love the fact that then we had this interdimensional squid monster thing that was different, and that you saw Red Skull die that way. And then the fact that was different on how Peggy Carter ended up in New York or whatever in the US 70 years later, how that was different. So I'm fine with that almost being similar, but I thought they deviated just enough to make it her story, because they still had to deal with the same threat and what was going on. And I love the cast voice, of course. Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher. And I thought Haley Atwell was able to add a certain amount of charm to an animated character as she normally does with her live action version. I got that from it. It was nice to see Sam Jackson back, Jeremy Renner. Stanley Tucci as Dr. Abram Erskine, I thought was great too to have back. And of course, Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark. I recognized Bradley Whitford's voice right away from Colonel John Flynn, and he played such a jerk. I love that. But Ross Marquand, who we know from The Living Dead,
The Walking Dead,
sorry, Red Skull, because he did the same thing in Avengers Endgame, in Infinity War. He came back to do that voice as well. Sebastian Stan sounded a little weird. My friend Chris Sharp commented that maybe he needs voiceover lessons to kind of accentuate him a little bit more. He kind of, I don't know, he just sounded a little off. Did you think so? Was it just me?
I could be. Well, remember, he kind of, we're not quite used to, he's kind of altered his voice for the Winter Soldier a little bit too.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Toby Jones returned as Zola, which is great. I love SNL alum Daryl Hammond was the Nazi general, so that was cool. And Matthew Wood, as we know from Star Wars and Clone Wars and the movies, adding some extra additional voices. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I just want to throw in real quick on the cast too. A lot of these guys aren't what you would call voice actors per se. There's a couple of them but I love the fact that they got Ross Marquand back in as the Red Skull, because he has done some voice acting work, and I think he's really good at it. And I think for a lot of these guys too, if they haven't done voice work before, it's a little bit hard to learn how to emote properly.
Right.
So I think they did a very good job. So
yeah, okay. Well, on to the next phase, and that is trivia. Howard Stark mentions that he spent a weekend with Hedy Lamarr, a movie star who was belatedly recognized as an underappreciated genius inventor who helped develop frequency hopping spread spectrum communication, a technology that serves as a key forerunner to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi technology. I had no idea. Did you know anything about this?
I had no idea about this.
I'm going to have to look up her IMDb because I've heard of her name before. So
I've heard her name before, but I didn't realize that she was tied into Bluetooth and things like that.
Yeah, well, she is an old school actress, like old-timey days.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So it's the Times hits, but it says Hedy Lamarr is a woman of many critics and fans alike regard as the most beautiful ever to appear in films. She was born in 1914 Vienna, now Austria, and she passed away in the year 2000 in Florida. Her top 4 movies that come up is Samson and Delilah in 1949, The Strange Woman in 1946, Her Highness and the Bellboy 1945, and Dishonored Lady in 1947. So she's been around for quite a while, and she did some stuff with Bob Hope as well. So classic, and I'm looking at her IMDb, and oh, dude, Screen Siren, hottie. Yep. All right, next we have Carter's superhero costume, especially the shirt, includes elements of the costume of Marvel's British World War II hero, Union Jack, and the national flag and makeup of the chest symbol. Question for you, Kyle. What is the difference between Union Jack and the other one that you spoke of earlier?
Captain Britain?
Yeah, what's the difference between those two guys?
It's a huge difference. Union Jack was a normal human being, just very athletic, very, probably top-notch physical condition. The costume design is still one of my all-time favorites in Marvel.
Union Jack?
Yeah, Union Jack. It is it's the Union Jack, and he's dressed head to toe in this like dark blue with a full like mask on, and
Right.
he just carries a knife and a revolver, and it's a real symbol.
So who's Captain Britain then?
Well, Captain Britain comes along much later and more in the modern era. And
How
Captain
much
Britain
later would you say? Like, give me a decade.
Well, I would say Captain Britain technically was 80s. Union Jack came out at the time when Captain America was fighting in World War II.
Okay. Did they ever meet up?
I'm sure they have at some point, because the family of Union Jack is a fairly prominent British family in the Marvel universe. But in with Captain Britain, Brian Braddock is his name. He gets his powers through a mystic source, and it turns out there's actually like a group of Captain Britons throughout the multiverse who kind of protect the aspects of the multiverse. So considering what's going on in Marvel, seeing a Captain Britain show up soon would be not surprising. And again, the Captain Britain costumes throughout the year have all been really fun. But the most probably well known is the Union Jack one that a lot of comic fans saw when he was part of the X-Men team Excalibur.
Okay.
So
gotcha. Cool. The Cephalopods Monster's name is not revealed, but it bears a major similarity to the multidimensional monster from the Marvel Comics, the Shumagorath. It had a multitude of violent tentacles with one big eye in the middle. Kyle, what you got for Shumagorath?
Big, bad, super really powerful, gives Doctor Strange fits, apparently will be making an appearance in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So
Really? Okay. All right. Good to know. And the last bit of trivia we got here is Colonel Chester Phillips is a key character in Captain America, the First Avengers. Is that the one that Tommy Lee Jones played?
I don't think it would. It might be, but I think it is.
Okay. But he does not appear in the alternate universe after he is shot and presumably dead during the attack sequence. He worked closely with Carter before the birth of his reality. So there you go. All right, we're going to take a quick break from the True Believers Marvel MCU discussion and let you know what other great podcasts are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Bloody Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to True Believers. Episode 24. We're covering the first episode of What If Captain Carter were the first Avenger. And this is where we dive deep into the plot analysis and any ties to the MCU and comics. And we got some interesting topics to bring up here because this show brings up some interesting things. So first and foremost, Kyle, since you're the comic guru, does this What If episode have any similarities to the What If Marvel comic book run?
Not not in so much as like similarities to a storyline it did in the
So
comics.
you're saying, wait, hold on. You're saying that no one went back and said, what if Captain America wasn't Captain America and it was someone else that had the serum?
Oh, they've done that. They've done that in a few things, but nothing that's even remotely similar to what they have here.
So who was it then?
They've done different people. Like, it's just what if like Bucky had become Captain America or something, or somebody else, or more of like, it's been more of what if Captain America wasn't trapped in the ice? What if Captain America, things like that. But in this case, I mean, the what ifs that we're going to get are all tied to the MCU, so they're all going to be original stories. So there's that. I mean, but the spirit of what if it is there. So I think that's more of the thing, is that it's its own version of what if, completely tied to the MCU. So you might not get a lot of ties to the comic books here, but I like the fact of the fact they're tying in the Watcher so preeminently in this, and how they're approaching it is very much like the comic books.
Okay. All right. So this is a topic I want to talk about, because this was something I actually thought of while I was watching this, because I was reminded of a scene in Avengers Endgame with the time heist, and they run out of the Pym particles while they're at the Battle of New York, and Ant-Man's like, what are we gonna do, he's freaking out, and then Captain America and Tony Stark go, wait a minute, we know what we can do, we will go back in time to where Pym was, at the old facility that Steve was at when he was a recruit there in New Jersey, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, same place that was in Captain America Winters.
Yes, and there's a scene where Captain America sees Carter's office, and he sees a picture, not of him as Captain America, but him as skinny Steve Rogers. And that, in my opinion, was the catalyst that made him make the decision, I'm going to go back in time, but I need to stay back in time, because it seems that she had something for me as Captain America and saw me for who I was before I came Captain America and took the serum. And in this episode, it kind of alludes to that. So does this episode confirm that Peggy had a thing for Skinny Steve before he became Captain America? Kyle?
I'm going to be honest. I always thought Peggy had a thing for Steve before he became Captain America, just in how they interacted before he even became Captain America in the film. So to me, that, I mean, for a lot of people, they can probably use that as justification, but I think they made it fairly obvious, at least in my opinion, watching Captain America, the first Avenger, she kind of had a thing for Steve before he even became Captain America in that movie. She, if nothing else, she was fascinated by him.
Yeah, it's a topic we haven't really discussed a lot in fandom since Endgame came out. And when Endgame came out and I saw that scene, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. She had something for him before he became Captain America. Because if you're not looking too close, if you're looking at the surface, you could see that she became enamored with him when he became Captain America. But he was still Steve. He was still, good heart, and, he didn't let it change him. And that's one of the things we like about him. But I was just like, that's when I kind of got the wake-up call, like, okay, there is a thing there. And he's like, I need to do something about this. I can't miss this chance. Therefore, that's why he stayed there.
Well, I think this is going to be a topic when we do our rewatch of Captain America, the First Avenger, and you rewatch it again after this.
We will talk about it, because I'm going to look at those scenes extra closely this time.
Because to me, it was pretty obvious she kind of had a thing for him. And I think, by showing that picture, maybe it was a confirmation for the audience that, the Steve Rogers she loved was that skinny Steve all along, because that's the man she met for the first time.
Right.
And that's when she started falling for him before that, but, then things happen.
Okay. So I want to ask you a question, Kyle. You know the comics, obviously, a lot more than I do. The Watcher, voiced by Jeffrey Wright. He says at the end, blah, 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 and I will not interfere. I got a little chuckle because it reminded me of Highlander, because if you watch the TV show after the movies, what's introduced are the Watchers. And the Watchers, if you know Highlander, they're about immortal that live hundreds and thousands of years, and they duel each other by cutting each other's heads off. When you cut off one of their heads, you get this thing called a quickening. You get their power and all their knowledge. You become stronger, and you move on, and they're supposed to eventually all battle down to one. But in a TV show, introduced something really cool called Watchers. And these are mortals, regular humans that know about this secret immortal world and document it without interfering. Of course, a few do, and that makes for some interesting television later on in the series. So I got to ask you, why is he important then? Why do I need to know about the Watcher? Apparently, the Watchers were interviewing the character of Stan Lee in one of the post scenes of the MCU. But why is he important? Does he interfere?
Okay, so Kevin, I'm about to break your heart because the Watcher's have been around for a very, very long time. He's been.
Why
around
are you breaking my heart? It's not breaking my heart.
Well, I was just going to say, because it is probably where some of the idea for the Watchers in Highlander came from.
But, okay, that's kind. Doesn't break my heart, though.
Yeah,
jeez, man. Yeah. I thought you were going to scare me there.
Yeah. No, Utah the Watcher, who has been kind of like the main Marvel Comics Watcher, is part of a race, and they are raised to be observers, to record and observe.
Why are they important?
So
if they don't interfere, I don't get this.
Okay. No, but they don't interfere. But the reason why the Watchers are important is because usually the Watchers don't make themselves visible to people.
Okay.
However, when a major event is about to happen, the Watchers become visible. So if you see a Watcher, you know the shit's about to go down.
Oh, okay. Does that mean they're going to say something so something changes?
No, they're not good. They don't interfere. They observe. But for Marvel has always said, if you see a Watcher...
What is their use for when they appear? Give me an example of what they did when they appeared and why that's important.
Okay, I'll give you a real good example was when Galactus tried to destroy the Earth. The Fantastic Four defeated him. Right. The Watcher showed up in that.
And what did he do?
He observed. Now, every once in a while...
That sounds useless. What good is he if he's just going to sit there and be a bystander? I don't get this.
Well, let me finish, because there has been storylines where there have been Watchers who've gone rogue and do interfere.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I wanted to hear.
But the aspect of it is like the Watcher has kind of befriended like the Fantastic Four and certain but they are infinitely powerful on a cosmic scale. So
it seems if they wanted to, the Watcher's important for this series to kind of narrate and let you know. For example, in the scene where Peggy says, "No, I'm going to stay in the room," the Watcher says, "This is when Peggy changed the timeline."
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So I get that here, but I'm trying to figure out if we see a future MCU movie and a Watcher pops up, and if it's just watching, that's not fun unless it gets in the way.
Not necessarily, because if for a lot of diehard Marvel fans, and I get it, but I get where you're coming from, Kevin. But if they see a Watcher pop up, it's like you're like, oh, it's about to go down now.
But how is that going to affect our current MCU heroes and villains? If
I don't know, because
pops up, what do you think might happen to the MCU? How would they affect someone?
I think it would be more of, as for the fans realizing, oh crap, we can see a Watcher. Something very, very significant. I'll give you a perfect example. If they had established the Watchers better by Endgame, the final battle at some point somebody would have seen a Watcher probably.
Is it kind of like seeing a black cat cross in front of you, like a bad omen to see them? That that type.
It's not necessarily a bad omen, because they can show up for important events on the good side too. But 9 times out of 10 in the comics, if a Watcher shows up, something major's about to happen. So you know. But it's a very interesting character and has a very interesting history. I'm going to be curious to see how they employ it after What If they introduce the Watcher. And again, I think there's a lot of these characters and things that they're kind of plotting right now that they're keeping in mind for Fantastic Four. Because there's so much of this stuff that is Fantastic Four related.
It seems like they're in a section. They seem to be part of the timey-wimey thing as well, which we're starting to really get into with the MCU phase. Is this phase 4?
We're in phase 4. Yeah, okay. We're in phase 4.
So it seems like there's a possibility we're going to get them sooner anyway, because it seems like phase 5 is we're going to start really getting Fantastic Four. So we're not going to get them for a couple of years. I don't know if they're going to wait that long if they've introduced them now. So I don't know. We'll see. It's
Let
interesting.
me put it this way: if I was going to say we were going to see a watcher in a movie anytime soon, it would be one of two places. It would either be in Eternals, because I think of what they're trying to do with Eternals, or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. One thing on the Watchers real quick, when I mentioned there was a version of Watchers in the Highlander series, things got interesting when there was rogue ones, as you say, that were evil and wanted to get rid of immortals, and also when one of the main Watchers was a main character of this TV series that befriended and became friends with the lead Highlander immortal character. So having people called Watchers and not do anything is boring. Yep. All right. I got one other main point I want to bring up with you here, Kyle. And, Kevin Feige says, yep, this is all canon, even though it's an animated series and it's a what-if thing. But there's been some rumblings out there and some talk, and I find this fascinating, that this episode of What If Captain Carter Were the First Avenger, could there be the possibility of a live-action version of Captain Carter for the future MCU project moving forward because of all these alternate timelines and dimensions? Could we see Haley Atwell actually return as Captain Carter in a possible either cameo or something, maybe even just for fun, but maybe even an important role with all this timey-wimey stuff that's now happening part of Phase 4, Kyle?
So, watch this, people. This is going to be fun.
Okay, I just want to let you know, before you answer that, I don't want a glass half full version answer of this, Kyle. Don't be raining on my parade.
No, this is going to be fun because there's a reason why this is a very distinct possibility, Kevin. And it's all thanks to Loki. Remember how the reason why we have What If and what's happening with these alternate realities is because of what happened at the end of this first season of Loki.
Of course.
And with Kang and all this. So this is the start of the ramifications of what happened in that. And that's first and foremost why this is important. The second aspect is, yes, we could easily see a version of Captain Carter, maybe in Doctor Strange. I think with Phase 4 of the MCU, after what happened at the end of Loki and what they're establishing now in What If, they have opened the door for some very interesting possibilities to bring back actors from the MCU, but in a different way.
Right.
And obviously with Captain Carter, we could have at least an appearance of Haley Atwell as Captain Carter in a Doctor Strange, or depending what's going to happen. The possibilities went from one sacred timeline we follow to an infinite realm of possibilities. And so, yeah, I think Kevin Feige is about to have a lot of fun with fans, because obviously there's some stuff that's coming that they won't be able to do. And that specifically what's going to be what the main part of the next episode of What If is.
Right.
But, yeah, there's a lot of fun possibilities that could come out of this, and we can use it as an excuse to bring in new iterations of characters, or bring in old actors who are reprising a role, but they're not reprising it as the same person that we've seen in the MCU before. So the key to Pandora's box has been unlocked thanks to a God of Mischief and a monologue multivariant Time Lord.
Okay. I hope so. I love Haley Atwell, and I would love to see her as a version of this, and I think it would be great. By the way, Kyle, we didn't bring something up in the beginning because I completely forgot about it, but I want you to bring it up in Phase 4, our final thoughts and such. I visited the Avengers Campus at California Adventureland across from Disneyland in LA, or Anaheim, actually. I want to talk about that briefly when we get to that. But I wanted to, first of all, before we get to Phase 4 with our final thoughts, I wanted to turn it over to you. Is there regarding anything regarding ties to the MCU, anything else that I missed and I didn't bring up that you want to talk about?
No, I think they did a very good job of kind of following the formula of Captain America, the first Avenger, in this What If.
Did they do a good version of a What If?
I think so. And I think they were smart about it, because I think the What Ifs are going to get more and more out there as they go along. But by keeping this one fairly close to source material was a good way to kind of ease people into What If.
Gotcha.
Because things are going to get much crazier with the stories as we go along. And yeah, I maybe didn't want to mention that because I'm highly jealous of you as far as Avengers Academy, because yeah, we don't get that in Orlando. Thank you.
You guys don't have Avengers Academy in Orlando?
They're because of Islands of Adventure and the Marvel Island of Adventure at Universal Studios, which is stuck perpetually in about 1993 because they aren't allowed to update it. But because of that, Marvel can't do Avengers Academy at Disney World either. There's a contract in place that everybody is begging for them to just Disney go buy out Universal on this so we can have Avengers Academy at. Now Disney can use like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that, but they can't use any of the characters that were used in the Marvel Islands of Adventure. So Fantastic Four's off limits, Hulk's off limits, Captain America's off limits, Spider-Man's off limits. It's a mess.
Before we get to Phase 4 and sharing my thoughts on that, I want to ask you something. Mm-hmm. Comics, rare comics, can be worth quite a bit of money. Is there a particular What If comic that is hard to find or worth more than others, or a coveted one, or the most popular one? If so, what would that be?
I don't think there's any What If out there that's like just raging full of like it's incredible value, but there's been a few What If storylines over the years that have been very, very popular. One of the classic ones is What If Uncle Ben had lived.
Right.
Another big one is What If Phoenix had lived. A lot of the What Ifs early on were like if somebody had lived or not.
Right. That's an easy target to see how that thing would have changed the timeline. So yeah.
But What If's had a few different iterations over its time in Marvel. There's the classic like 70s, early 80s versions of What If. Then it got canceled. It came back in the 90s. There was a couple of ones in that were really popular. One that comes to mind is What If the symbiotic suit had bonded with Spider-Man. And that was a really interesting story.
Okay.
Then just to wrap this up real quick, there was What If got canceled again. And instead of bringing back What If, Marvel created a series called Exiles, where they took a bunch of miscast heroes who fell out of time. And they put them in this group together. And some of them were heroes, some of them were villains.
Were they being hunted by the authorities, and were they being hired by people that needed help?
No, but what they were doing was being... No. But they were being sent through different time streams to correct something. Think like Voyagers.
Okay.
They had a device called the Talus, and they would go to a different alternate reality to set something right. And sometimes it was something simple, and sometimes it was something pretty major. But it was kind of like a What If with going to these different interesting timeline variants. And it sets up with What If they could actually do an Exile series, and I think a lot of people would really like that because for a while the series was quite popular and actually spun out one of the more popular characters from the X-Men timeline into Exiles.
Gotcha. Okay. Kind of another What If series. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's head into Phase 4, but before we hit our episode final thoughts, I went to Avengers Academy.
Okay, can I just comment that you actually had incredible luck when you went to Disney, because not only did you you obviously had a nice weather, it was hot, but you were able to not only score a Rise of the Resistance ride, but a Spider-Man ride as well.
Okay, let me tell you that real quick. So we had a park hopper pass to go Disneyland first, and then walk right across the way to do California Adventureland. And the only two rides that were only taking virtual requests, you can't walk up to them, was of course Star Wars Rise of the Resistance and the new Spider-Man web slinger thing, whatever it was called. Mm-hmm. And you start at 7:00 in the morning when it goes live on the app. Everything's on the phone now, right? And we were actually waiting to get into the parking structure, which opened up at 7. And we're like, okay. And it's funny because when you start seeing the people walk up to the kiosk, the parking kiosk, they kind of waited a minute because they knew people were like getting on their apps. And there was 3 of us in the car ready to do it. And our buddy, and all of our tickets were combined, or linked, as that's what I meant. And so our buddy Will got in first and got us all for Rise of the Resistance. Here's the thing, though. So we have to wait till noon to try to get into the park hopper. Well, actually, we had to wait till 1 to where we can actually go into the park hopper for California Adventureland, which includes the Avengers Campus and Cars World and all that. So we're waiting for our line to get our queue to be ready to get in to see Rise of the Resistance. And we were supposed to go in about 10:30, 11, but then it gets delayed. Now, there's a rule. You can't have 2 virtual passes on your queue. So it got pushed back. We're going over to, we walked over to the entrance of Rise of the Resistance, and it says it'll be ready in a half an hour. Half an hour was going to end at 12:05 p.m. And we're like, great, we're screwed. What are we going to do? So I went over, asked this lady. She wasn't very helpful. She says, I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they'll let you in early. We don't know. Went over to another guy and asked him, and he says, I told him our situation. I said, look, we're trying to get into the Spider-Man thing. We're not going to be allowed to because we have this in our queue already, our virtual queue. He says, I'll tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel your virtual queue passes. And I got a little scared there. He says, but I'm going to give you each a fast pass for this ride. So it doesn't count as a virtual queue. I said, that's great. So I was able to do that. He scanned all of our tickets. We all got the fast pass. 12 went live. All 3 of us were doing it. I got us in for like 3 hours later. So we were good. Going to the fast pass for, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've gone into the fast pass for the Rise of the Resistance, it was like we were going in like the Rockstar entrance. We didn't actually have to go through that line that was already in the hot weather for our group. Went straight in there and got right in, dude. It was awesome.
Yes, I have done the fast pass for.
That wasn't the same for when we got to the Spider-Man ride. We actually had to wait in the queue. It was hot, but finally we got in there. Gotta tell you, dude, I was a little disappointed with this ride.
That's what I've heard. I'm not gonna lie. That's what I've heard.
The Toy Story Astro Blaster ride, which is kind of a similar thing.
The game that kills your elbow.
Yes. But it was much more fun than this because in this one, the Spider-Man ride, visually it was great. It felt shorter than the Astro Blaster. You're in the same thing. You put on these glasses and there's this motion detector that motions your arms as if you were Spider-Man. You're supposed to throw your arms forward and do the Spider-Man thing, right? Guess what gets really tired after the first couple times of that? Your arms. I'm sorry. This was not fun, and it's not always that accurate as well. And it was great visually. The sound was great and stuff like that. But I tell you, I got burnt out after a while, and I wish they would just give you a web shooter with a gun and a trigger. That would have been a lot more fun. As you're walking through the line, there is a version of that they show like someone was using the web shooter stuff and they shot it through like a gun. Before I forget though, when you're waiting in line, you see people that are part of this web group, WEB. I forget what it stands for, but you see Peter Parker. They don't tell you that he is Spider-Man. And you see the woman who becomes Squirrel Girl. Apparently she's part of this as Growl. Yeah. I forget what's the character's real name.
I can't think of it off the top of my head,
but you also see the young Harley character from Iron Man 3. His picture grown up, like you saw him at the end of Endgame. I hope they really bring him into like the Young Avengers because I really want him to take the mantle of Iron Man, and I hope that they do that. But anyway, not a fan. I don't know. I may go again if I get a fast pass or something, but I was really disappointed. But the Avengers compound itself was really cool. They have this big building. You see characters walk along a little bit and kind of show themselves. And then you see some fight scenes with some, I guess, Hydra-looking people with fighting with T'Challa and Black Widow. Then after that battle ends, Iron Man kind of came out and did a wave and a high. The new Captain America came out with Sam. And Loki came out a little bit later, made an appearance, and we didn't have time, but there was a show that Doctor Strange puts on as well. They had a shawarma place you can get food. They have a Pim's place you could eat. So it was a lot of fun. They're probably going to add more stuff to it, but to me, I got to do thumbs down on the Spider-Man thing unless I can get in quick and out and stuff. But anyway.
So in other words, you actually prefer maybe the Spider-Man ride that's still here at Universal
Islands of Adventure? Yes, please, yes, that was a lot more fun. I'll say right now, they got to give you guns for the Spider-Man thing because I'm sorry, my arms were getting tired and I was growing frustrated with it.
Gotcha. Well,
So, final thoughts, Kyle.
I think it was a great introduction into What If. I know a lot of people are already loving the Captain Carter character, and I think they've got something on their hands there, whether they follow up on it. I'm sure, knowing Kevin Feige, he knows when he's got something, a hot property on his hands, he'll find a way to use it. I don't think we've seen the last of Captain Carter, even in What If. We don't know what all the episodes are yet, and maybe there's something where they bring some of these characters in all together towards the end of What If to see what happens. It's going to be interesting, but I like where they're starting. I'm liking the animation. Again, I love the fact that we're going to get the Marvel actors for the most part portraying their roles, and I think that's going to be especially touching when we get into what is the next episode of What If, Kevin.
Yes, exactly. And we'll tease that in just a moment. But I thought this was a lot of fun. I liked the animation. I think there might be some people on the fence about that, but I liked it. I really enjoyed. It sounded like Haley Atwell was having a lot of fun voicing this and being able to be part of the MCU again and be Captain Carter. I can only imagine how much fun that was in. And I think there's a report that we're going to be seeing some Captain Carter action figures as well, which I think is great.
Yeah, but the Marvel Legends is doing a whole What If line.
Oh, great!
And Captain Carter and the Hydra Smasher are two of the figures.
Oh, very cool, very cool. And the Hydra Smasher I thought was great. It's kind of like an early version of the Iron Man suit, which I thought was cool. Yeah. Just a lot of fun. I'm really excited about that. So anyway, till next time, Kyle, go ahead and close this out here, man.
Yeah. First of all, let's tell you where you can find not only True Believers, but all the great shows of the Fandom Podcast Network. And it starts at our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Of course, visit our Facebook group too. We got a lot of fun Marvel things going on there. You can subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. We try to get all of our shows up there and have some fun original content, which we are working on getting back to. Of course, too, you can support us by going to tpublic.com, looking for the gear of the Fandom Podcast Network. Our guy is working hard to get the True Believers gear up there. He's had some Hydra viruses hitting his computer. So
pesky little bastards, man, I'll tell you.
Yeah, they just get into everything. Aramzola, it's a whole mess. But go to tpublic.com, search for the Fandom Podcast Network or the titles of any of our great shows. You can find the gear there, whether it's shirts, hoodies, phone cases, or whatever else you can imagine.
Zola, underrated enemy in the MCU?
It's Toby Jones. He's always underrated.
I love him, man. He's great.
Yeah, he's great. If you want to contact us directly, you can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Check out the actual homepage on Facebook for the Fandom Podcast Network, as well as Instagram, Fandom Podcast Network, and on Twitter at FanPod Network. I am Kyle. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. And of course, I'm always over there at the True Believers Facebook group.
And lastly, you know what? We love reviews. We always are trying to make better podcasts to feed your ears around here. Please leave us some reviews, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, one of the great podcast catchers you can find us on. But before we get out of here, Kevin, let's talk about what we got coming up next, which is episode 2 of What If. And Kevin, I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be a hard one for me to get through because the story is how would have happened if T'Challa and not Peter Quill was picked up by Yondu as a child and became Star-Lord. But the more importance of this is this was Chadwick Boseman's last portrayal of the Black Panther.
Hence why this is going to be tough and emotional for you, not because you can't believe that he becomes Star-Lord, but this was his last performance as this character. So yeah. This is going to be fun to watch. It's going to be curious to see how this goes and who's going to be in this. And so yeah, I'm excited for this one. I'm enjoying this series thus far.
Well, for now, let's see what's going to happen with What If as we ask the question, and tune in next time to True Believers, where with What If, Kevin could be joined by the Watcher for his co-host next week. I'm just saying. It might be a very boring podcast because it would be a one-way conversation. But until then, hopefully I will be back next week with Kevin as well, and timelines don't get screwy. But as always, Excelsior True Believers, and make ours Marvel.